Hi everybody and welcome to Treasure Time for this week. Reverend Vicky here. I hope you've had a great week. We're going to begin our worship today with a brilliant action song, Our God is a Great Big God. I hope you enjoy it.
Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. He is higher than a skyscraper, and He's deeper than a submarine. He is wider than the universe and beyond my wildest dreams. And He's known me and He's loved me since before the world began. How wonderful to be a part of God's amazing plan. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. He is higher than a skyscraper and deeper than a submarine. He is wider than the universe and beyond my wildest dreams. And He's known me and He's loved me since before.
This week we're going to continue looking at amazing people in God's story. If you remember last week we looked at Esther and how brave she was in asking the king to save her people. This week we're going to look at the story of Daniel. So remember that you've got to pay attention because we're going to have a little bit of a think about the story afterwards. So listen very carefully.
A long time ago, there lived a man named Daniel. He was a good man and loved God with all of his heart. Daniel lived a normal, peaceful life in the land of Israel, until one day, Israel was attacked by an invading army. The invaders captured Daniel and many other people, and they were taken to a faraway place called Babylon. Babylon was very different from Israel. Most people there didn't follow God like he did, but Daniel continued to trust God. He knew that God was always with him. Because Daniel was faithful, God blessed whatever he put his hand to, and people started to notice that there was something special about Daniel. Eventually, even the king of Babylon saw that Daniel was well-liked and that he was a hard worker. He took a liking to Daniel, and he even gave him a job in the palace.
Daniel, my boy, how would you like to work in the king's service?
Daniel continued to be obedient to God, and God continued to bless him. Pretty soon, the king wanted to make Daniel his right-hand man. He would be the second most powerful man in the entire country. But not everyone liked Daniel. In fact, some people hated him. A few of the nobles in the palace were very jealous of Daniel's success, and they started plotting to get rid of him.
Who does this Daniel think he is?
We'll show him who's really in charge here.
This group of wicked men started to spy on Daniel, trying to catch him doing something wrong so they could get him kicked out of the palace. For weeks, they watched his every move, but Daniel never made a mistake. He worked hard every day. He was kind and respectful to the people around him. They couldn't find a single thing wrong with him. And this made them hate Daniel even more.
That blasted Daniel is perfect. We'll never get him. Maybe there's another way.
Just then, an evil scheme popped in their heads. While they were spying on Daniel, they noticed that 3 times a day he would stop whatever he was doing to spend a few minutes praying and worshiping God. They came up with a plan to trick the king into getting rid of Daniel.
Daniel prays to his God every day. Maybe we could use that against him.
Yes, finally we'll be rid of him once and for all.
The wicked nobles approached the king with an idea for a new law, one that would make the king feel very powerful.
Oh, great and mighty king. Sign a decree that the people can only pray to you for the next 30 days. And anyone who prays to any god other than you shall be thrown into a den of lions.
The king really liked this idea, but he didn't realize the effect it would have on Daniel. He signed the decree, and it became the law of the land.
Hear ye, people of Babylon! The king has set forth a new order.
The wicked nobles waited to see if Daniel would follow the king's new law. And just as they expected, Daniel chose to obey God instead. He continued to spend time with God every day, praying and worshiping him. The nobles immediately ran to the king and told him what they had seen.
Oh, great king, we bring terrible news. Daniel has betrayed you and broken your law. By your own decree, he must be punished.
All of a sudden, the king realized that he had been tricked by the nobles, but there was nothing he could do. With great sadness, he ordered that Daniel be taken away and punished according to the law. The king's guards captured Daniel and dragged him out of the city to a pit filled with ferocious lions. The nobles watched with a wicked smile as the guards grabbed Daniel and threw him down into the pit. The opening to the cave was shut, and Daniel disappeared into the darkness. Daniel was surrounded by hungry lions in a pitch-black cave, but he still knew that God was with him. And you'll never guess what happened. Nothing. The lions didn't attack. God sent an angel to shut the mouths of the lions, and they didn't touch Daniel, not even a scratch. The next morning, the king ran to the lion's den, and he couldn't believe his eyes. Daniel came out of the pit completely unharmed, and the king was overjoyed.
Daniel, you're alive! Your God has saved you!
But his joy quickly changed to anger as he turned to the men who had plotted against Daniel.
You wicked tricksters will pay for what you've done.
The king ordered the guards to grab those men and throw them into the lion's den. Every one of them was devoured before they even hit the ground. Daniel knew that no matter what, God was always with him. He trusted God, and because of that, God saved Daniel from the lion's den. The end.
I wonder what you remember from the story, what struck you. So maybe pause the video for a moment and tell your family or your teacher about the things that you remember about the story. And then when you're ready, press play again. So the story today was about Daniel, and Daniel was a really nice guy. He had friends and he was very popular. And isn't it sad when other people can then be jealous because somebody gets on well in life or is popular? And instead of being friends with Daniel, they decided that they would trick the king into hurting Daniel. What they hadn't counted on was that Daniel knew and trusted God. And Daniel knew, didn't he, that even though there was a new law in that he wasn't to pray to anyone apart from the king, Daniel knew that that was wrong. And sometimes for us it's hard to do the right thing, isn't it? But Daniel knew here that the right thing to do was to keep praying to God. It was important that he had that friendship with God. And he trusted God. And even when real difficulties then came his way, when he went into the lion's den, because he trusted God, God saw him through that really difficult, scary time. Now, sometimes we get scared about things, don't we? We also might be jealous of other people, maybe about how popular they are. Or maybe we want to trick people into doing the wrong thing. So we're now going to spend a little bit of time in prayer. And we can have a little bit of space to think about the story and think if there's anything that we need to learn from the story. And then we'll move on to praying for our world and our family and friends as we usually do. So let's just take a moment of quiet now. So in our story today, we knew that Daniel trusted God and asked for his help, even when he was thrown into that lion's den and faced a really, really scary time. He would have also asked God to help him to know what the right thing to do was. And there might be times in our day-to-day, or maybe in the next week, where we don't know what to do or we need God's help. And one of the things that we can do is just ask God for help. And you could say a little prayer of Jesus, Lord, help me. And the next song that we're going to listen to is about speaking God's name and about him always being with us. So I hope you enjoy this next song.
Every day is filled with voices do